The Universal Exchange occupied an entire moon. Station Meridian had been carved from the dead rock of a gas giant satellite over 12,000 years ago. Its hull stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Its data centers processed more information in a single second than most species generated in a century. And its markets controlled the flow of wealth across 10,000 star systems. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stood at the observation deck and watched the trading floor below. Thousands of alien beings moved between terminals and holographic displays. Numbers flickered and changed. Credits flowed from one account to another. The whole thing hummed with quiet efficiency. "It's beautiful," said Marcus Webb. He stood beside her with his hands in his pockets. "And completely dead." Tanaka looked at her colleague. Webb had spent 30 years on Wall Street before the contact. He had survived 4 market crashes, 2 investigations, and 1 divorce. His hair had gone gray in his 40s. His eyes had stayed sharp. "Dead?" Tanaka asked. "Look at the volatility index." Webb pointed to a display showing market movements. A flat line stretched across the screen. "That index hasn't moved more than 0.5% in 300 years. You know what we call a market that doesn't move? Stable? A corpse." Webb shook his head. "These people have forgotten what risk means. They've built the most sophisticated financial system in the galaxy, and they're using it to do nothing." A chime sounded. Their escort had arrived. The Mallory called himself Elder Sithax. His species resembled tall insects with too many arms and eyes that reflected light like broken glass. He wore robes that cost more than most planets earned in a year. He looked at the 2 humans the way a professor might look at particularly slow students. "Welcome to Station Meridian," Sithax said. His translator gave his voice a pleasant, neutral tone. "I trust your journey was comfortable." "Very comfortable," Tanaka said. "Thank you for the invitation." "It is not an invitation. It is a requirement." Sithax began walking, and the humans followed. "Your species has been granted provisional trading access to the Universal Exchange. You are required to complete a standard orientation period. I have been assigned to oversee your education." They walked through corridors filled with artwork from 100 civilizations. Sculptures made of crystallized light. Paintings that moved and changed based on the viewer's emotions. Tapestries woven from the silk of extinct creatures. The Universal Exchange was established 12,000 years ago, Sithax explained. It brought order to galactic commerce. Before its founding, economic relations between species were chaotic and unpredictable. Wars were fought over trade disputes. Civilizations collapsed due to market instabilities. The exchange ended all of that. How? Tanaka asked. Through standardization, through regulation, through the careful management of risk. Sithax stopped before a massive door. The Consortium of 12 oversees all major market activities. We ensure that volatility remains within acceptable parameters. We prevent the kind of chaos that once threatened galactic civilization. The door opened. Beyond it lay the largest trading floor Tanaka had ever seen. Beings from dozens of species worked at stations arranged in perfect geometric patterns. The air was filled with the soft hum of technology and the quiet murmur of voices. You will be assigned a trading station in the developmental species section, Sithax said. Your investment caps will be strictly enforced. All trades must be approved by a consortium supervisor. These restrictions will remain in place until humanity demonstrates sufficient economic maturity. Webb raised an eyebrow. And how long does that usually take? The Draxi have been members for 6,000 years. They are still classified as developmental. Sithax's many eyes blinked slowly. Economic maturity is not about time. It is about understanding. Most species never achieve it. He led them to a small corner of the trading floor. Their station consisted of 2 terminals and a single display screen. Around them, alien traders worked at much larger stations with much better equipment. "You may begin your orientation," Sifak said. "I will return to check on your progress." He left. Tanaka and Webb sat at their terminals and began exploring the system. For 3 hours, they studied the market data. They analyzed trading patterns. They examined the historical records. And slowly, a picture began to form. "It's rigged," Webb said quietly. Tanaka looked around to make sure no one was listening. "What do you mean?" "Not rigged like fraud. Rigged like a casino, where the house always wins." Webb pulled up a series of charts. "Look at this. The consortium species control 94% of all wealth in the exchange. They've held that percentage for over 2,000 years. It never changes." "That's not possible. Markets fluctuate. Winners and losers change. Not here." Webb leaned back in his chair. "They've eliminated fluctuation. They've eliminated risk. And without risk, there's no opportunity for anyone else to catch up. The rich stay rich forever, and everyone else stays exactly where they are." Tanaka studied the data. She was an economist. She had spent her career building models and analyzing systems. And she had never seen anything like this. "The algorithms," she said slowly, "they're designed to maintain equilibrium. Anytime the market starts to shift, the system automatically corrects." "Exactly. It's not a market. It's a machine designed to preserve the status quo." Webb smiled, but there was no humor in it. "And I don't think they even realize it. They've been doing this for so long that they think it's natural. They think stable markets are the same as healthy markets." "So what do we do?" Webb was quiet for a long moment. He stared at the flat line on the volatility index. He thought about everything he had learned in 30 years of trading. About risk and reward. About fear and greed. About the beautiful, terrible chaos of a truly free market. "We teach them," he said finally. "We teach them what they've forgotten." Over the following months, the human delegation grew. Traders arrived from every major financial center on Earth. They studied the galactic markets. They learned the rules. And they began to plan. The aliens watched with amusement. The humans were so primitive. They came from a planet that had only discovered faster than light travel a few decades ago. Their economy was tiny. Their resources were limited. What could they possibly do? Webb and Tanaka kept their heads down. They made small trades. They followed the rules. They asked questions that the aliens found childishly simple. "Why don't you short sell?" Webb asked Sithax one day. The elder blinked his many eyes. "I do not understand the question. Short selling. When you borrow an asset, sell it, then buy it back later at a lower price. You profit from the decline." Sithax stared at Webb as if he had suggested something obscene. Why would anyone want an asset to decline in value? Because sometimes assets are overvalued. Sometimes prices need to correct. The exchange does not allow prices to become overvalued. Our algorithms ensure proper valuation at all times. Sithax shook his head. Your question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of how advanced economies function. Webb nodded politely, but inside, he was smiling. They were right. The aliens had no framework for what he was describing. They had eliminated volatility so completely that they had forgotten it existed. They had no defenses against strategies they couldn't imagine. 6 months after their arrival, the human delegation filed paperwork to establish an investment fund. The application was approved without much attention. Humans were a developmental species with tiny resources. What harm could they do? The fund was given a name chosen with careful irony. They called it Stability Partners. The consortium noticed the filing. A few of them laughed. The idea of humans offering stability was absurd. They were the most volatile species anyone had ever encountered. Their history was full of wars, revolutions, crashes, and chaos. "Let them play," said one consortium member. "They will learn." Elder Sithax was less certain. He had spent enough time with the humans to sense something different about them. They asked strange questions. They looked at the markets in ways that made no sense. "They are planning something," he told the consortium. "I do not know what. They have no power. They have no resources. They cannot affect anything. Perhaps." Sithax watched the humans from across the trading floor. Webb and Tanaka sat at their tiny station, studying data, talking quietly. "But I have learned something about their species. They do not accept limitations. When they see a wall, they do not stop. They ask why the wall exists. All young species are ambitious. They will learn their place. I hope you are correct." Sithax turned away, but the feeling in his gut remained. Something was coming. Something the consortium had never prepared for. At their small station, Webb and Tanaka finalized their plans. They had identified the weaknesses. They had found the pressure points. They knew exactly where to push. "Are we sure about this?" Tanaka asked. Webb looked at her. "They've locked the galaxy in amber. Trillions of beings living under an economic system designed to keep them exactly where they are forever. The Draxi have been trying to climb out of poverty for 6,000 years. 6,000 years, Yuki, and they're no closer than when they started. So we're doing this for them? We're doing this because it's right. Because stagnation isn't stability. Because a system that prevents change isn't serving anyone except the people on to." 2 years had passed since Stability Partners filed its first paperwork. In that time, the fund had grown from a joke to a curiosity to something that made the consortium uncomfortable in ways they could not quite explain. The humans were doing something wrong. Everyone agreed on that much. Their trading patterns made no sense. They bought things that were falling. They sold things that were rising. They made bets that seemed designed to fail. And yet they kept winning. Marcus Webb stood before a classroom of human traders. They had rented a small conference room on Station Meridian. The walls were bare. The furniture was cheap. But the people inside were some of the sharpest minds Earth had ever produced. "Forget everything you think you know about galactic markets," Webb said. "These people have been trading for 12,000 years, and they've learned nothing. They've optimized for the wrong thing." A young trader raised her hand. Her name was Chun, and she had made her first billion before she turned 30. "What do you mean by wrong thing?" "They optimize for stability, for predictability, safety." Webb wrote a number on the board. "The Galactic Volatility Index hasn't moved more than 1% in 3 centuries. Do you know what that means? The markets are efficient? No, it means the markets are dead." Webb circled the number. "Volatility isn't a bug. It's a feature. It's how markets discover true prices. It's how capital flows to where it's needed. It's how bad companies die and good companies grow." He pulled up a chart showing the wealth distribution across the galaxy. A tiny spike at the top represented the consortium species. Everything else was a flat line barely above zero. When you eliminate volatility, you eliminate opportunity. You freeze everything in place. The rich stay rich. The poor stay poor. Nothing changes. Nothing grows. Webb looked at his students. "We're going to change that." For 3 months, he taught them what he called chaos mathematics. It was not really mathematics. It was a philosophy, a way of seeing the world. The aliens believed that markets should be predictable. They believed that prices should reflect value. They believed that good information led to good outcomes. The humans knew better. They knew that markets were made of people, that people were irrational, that fear and greed moved more money than any algorithm ever could. Most importantly, they knew that every stable system contained hidden weaknesses. Pressure built up over time. Cracks formed beneath the surface. All it took was the right push at the right moment. Their first real target was the Velthari grain monopoly. The Velthari were an agricultural species. They had been growing food for the galaxy for 8,000 years. Their grain futures were considered the safest investment in the exchange. Everyone knew that Velthari harvests were reliable. Everyone knew that prices would stay steady. Dr. Tanaka had studied the Velthari agricultural system for 6 months. She had found something interesting. They're overextended, she told the team. They've been promising more grain than they can actually deliver. Not by much. Maybe 2 or 3%. But they've been doing it for centuries. Why would they do that? Chun asked. Because no one ever checks. The algorithms assume Velthari grain is risk-free. So the Velthari can borrow against future harvests that haven't happened yet. They've been slowly building up debt for 800 years. Webb smiled. And what happens if there's a bad harvest? There hasn't been a bad harvest in 12 centuries. The algorithms don't even consider the possibility. But it could happen. It could always happen. Farming is farming, even in space. Solar flares. Crop diseases. Equipment failures. Tanaka pulled up a map of Velthari space. I've identified 3 worlds that are overdue for solar activity. If any of them get hit, production drops. The humans began buying options. These were contracts that gave them the right to sell Velthari grain at current prices in the future. If prices stayed stable, the options were worthless. If prices dropped, they would be worth a fortune. The consortium did not understand what they were doing. Options trading existed in galactic markets, but no one used it seriously. Why would you bet on prices changing when prices never changed? 6 weeks later, a solar flare hit one of the Velthari harvest worlds. It was not a major flare. It reduced production by less than 5%. Under normal circumstances, no one would have noticed. But the humans had been spreading rumors. Nothing illegal, just questions asked in the right places. Did you know the Velthari have been over-reporting harvests? Did you hear about the debt they've accumulated? What happens if they can't deliver? When news of the solar flare spread, something happened that had not happened in centuries. People started selling Velthari grain futures. Not because they had analyzed the situation. Not because they understood the fundamentals. But because they were suddenly, unexpectedly afraid. The Velthari grain index dropped 3% in a single day. To humans, this was nothing. Markets on Earth moved 3% before lunch on slow days. But on a universal exchange, it was an earthquake. Algorithms that had never seen such movement started making strange decisions. Traders who had never experienced volatility panicked, and the humans exercised their options. Stability Partners made 600 million credits in 12 hours. It was not enough to matter in the grand scheme of galactic finance, but it was enough to get attention. Elder Sithax summoned Webb to his office. The Mallory's chambers were decorated with art from 100 worlds. Tapestries hung from the walls. Sculptures floated in gravity fields. The furniture was designed for a being with 6 arms and no legs. Webb sat on a chair that had been brought in specially for him. He looked comfortable, relaxed, like a man who had been expecting this meeting. "Explain," Sithax said. "Explain what?" "You knew the solar flare was coming. I knew a solar flare was possible. The star in that system has a 16-year activity cycle. We're in year 15. It wasn't prediction. It was probability." Sithax's many eyes narrowed. "And the options? You were betting on prices to fall?" "Yes. Why would you do that?" Why would you want prices to fall? Webb leaned forward. I want you to think about that question. Really think about it. You've been running these markets for 12,000 years, and you can't understand why someone would bet on prices falling. It is destructive. It profits from harm. Does it? The Valkyrie were overextended. They had been lying about their production for centuries. Our bet didn't cause that. We just noticed it. Webb spread his hands. We made the market do what markets are supposed to do. We found a price that was wrong, and we corrected it. Civax was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the human sitting across from him. Such a small creature. Such a short lifespan. Such a young species. And yet there was something in Webb's eyes that made Civax uncomfortable. A kind of certainty that did not match humanity's place in the galaxy. What is it that you want? Civax asked finally. We want what every species wants. A fair chance. An opportunity to grow. You have those things. No, we don't. Webb stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the trading floor stretched into the distance. You've built a system where nothing changes. Where the species on top stay on top forever. Where everyone else is locked in place. Stability protects everyone. Stability protects the powerful. Everyone else just survives. Webb turned back to face the elder. We're not here to destroy anything. We're here to introduce a concept you've forgotten. What concept? Creative destruction. Webb smiled. The idea that sometimes things have to fall apart before they can be rebuilt. That death makes room for new life. That change, even painful change, is better than stagnation. Civax did not respond. He sat in his floating chair and thought about what the human had said. In 12,000 years, no one had spoken to him like this. No one had questioned the fundamental assumptions of galactic economics. It was disturbing. It was offensive. And somewhere deep in his mind, in a place he did not want to acknowledge, it made a terrible kind of sense. Word of Stability Partners' success spread across the exchange. Other species began asking questions. The Draxi sent representatives to meet with the humans. So did the Korath, the Milani, and a dozen other developmental species. They all wanted to know the same thing. How did you do it? Can you teach us? Webb and Tanaka welcomed them all. They explained chaos mathematics. They taught option pricing models. They shared strategies that humans had developed over centuries of market chaos. The consortium tried to stop them. They passed new regulations. They raised barriers. They threatened to revoke humanity's trading access. None of it worked. You can't regulate an idea, Webb told a consortium hearing. You can't outlaw a way of thinking. Either your markets are strong enough to handle volatility, or they're not. If they're not, maybe you should be asking why. The hearing ended without resolution. The consortium members argued among themselves. Some wanted to expel the humans entirely. Others worried that would only prove Webb's point. While they debated, the humans kept trading. They kept teaching. They kept winning. And slowly, a new generation of traders began to emerge. Young aliens who had grown up under the consortium's unchanging system, who had never known anything except stability, who looked at the humans and saw something they had never imagined, possibility. They called themselves the Volatiles. They met in secret. They studied human methods. They asked questions that made their L5 years after Stability Partners made its first trade. The galactic economy looked the same on the surface. The numbers still flickered. The credits still flowed. The consortium still controlled 94% of all wealth. But beneath that surface, something was changing. Dr. Tanaka sat in a secure room deep within the human embassy on Station Meridian. Around her were representatives from 12 species. The Draxi were there. their gray skin marked with patterns that showed their low economic status. The Korath attended through hologram, their insectoid forms flickering in the light. A dozen others had sent delegates. They called themselves the Coalition of the Forgotten, species that had been locked out of wealth for centuries, species that had watched the consortium grow richer while they grew nothing at all. "Project Prometheus is ready," Tanaka said. She pulled up a holographic display showing financial networks stretching across the galaxy. "We've spent 3 years mapping the consortium's debt obligations. What we found will change everything." A Draxi named Kallax leaned forward. His people had been the first to join the humans. They had suffered under consortium economic control for 6,000 years. They had nothing left to lose. "What did you find?" he asked. Tanaka highlighted a section of the map. Lines connected thousands of institutions across hundreds of worlds. "The entire galactic economy is built on debt. That's not unusual. All economies use debt. But this debt has never been audited. No one has actually checked whether the institutions holding it can pay." "Of course they can pay," said a Korath representative. "The consortium banks have existed for millennia. They exist. That doesn't mean they're solvent." Tanaka zoomed in on a cluster of connections. "Look at this. The Mallory Banking Guild is owed money by the Volthari Agricultural Consortium. The Volthari are owed money by the Dreth Manufacturing Collective. The Dreth are owed money by the Mallory Banking Guild." The room was quiet. The aliens stared at the circular pattern on the display. "They owe each other money," Kallax said slowly. "In a circle. Not just one circle. Thousands of circles. Millions of them." Tanaka pulled back to show the full network. It looked like a spider web designed by someone insane. The consortium species have been borrowing from each other for 12,000 years. They've rolled over debt so many times that no one remembers who actually owes what to whom. "But the system works," the Korath said. "It has always worked. It works because everyone believes it works. That's the only thing holding it together." Tanaka turned off the display. "The galactic economy isn't backed by real assets. It's backed by confidence, faith, trust. And if that faith breaks, then everything falls apart." The coalition members looked at each other. They understood what Tanaka was suggesting. They understood how dangerous it was. They also understood that it might be their only chance. Marcus Webb entered the room. He looked tired. He had been working 20-hour days for months, building something that the consortium could not control. "The decentralized exchange is ready," he announced. "We're calling it Freenet. It operates outside consortium oversight. Trades are verified through a distributed network. No single authority can shut it down or manipulate it. The consortium will declare it illegal," Kallax said. "They can declare whatever they want. They can't enforce it." Webb sat down at the table. "Freenet gives us a backup. If the universal exchange collapses, we have somewhere to go. Somewhere they can't touch." Tanaka nodded. "We're not trying to destroy the galactic economy. We're trying to fix it. But fixing it means showing everyone how broken it really is." Over the following weeks, the coalition spread the word quietly. They recruited volatile traders from 100 species. They established Freenet nodes on worlds outside consortium control. They prepared for something no one in the galaxy had seen in 12,000 years. A genuine market correction. The consortium noticed the activity. They couldn't understand it, but they could feel it. Their algorithms detected unusual patterns. Their analysts found connections they couldn't explain. Elder Sithax called an emergency meeting of the consortium leadership. "The humans are planning something," he told them. "I have spent 5 years watching them. They are patient. They are methodical. And they believe they can bring down our entire economic system. A Valkyrie representative laughed. Impossible. They are children playing with toys they do not understand. They understood well enough to profit from your grain crisis. The laughter stopped. We should have expelled them years ago, said a Dreth delegate. Remove them from the exchange. Revoke their trading access. End this before it begins. And confirm everything they've been saying? Prove that we're afraid of fair competition? Sivak shook his head. That would do more damage than anything they could do themselves. Then, what do you suggest? Sithax was quiet for a moment. He had thought about this question for 5 years. He had analyzed every possibility, and he had come to a conclusion he did not like. We eliminate the threat directly, he said. Webb is the center of their operation. Without him, the others will lose direction. The room fell silent. The consortium had not authorized an assassination in 3,000 years. It was considered barbaric, uncivilized, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Do it quietly, the Valkyrie representative said. Make it look like an accident. The order was given. A team was assembled. Credits changed hands in accounts that did not officially exist. 3 weeks later, Marcus Webb was attacked in a corridor of Station Meridian. The assassins were professionals. They came from a species that specialized in such work. They had killed targets far more dangerous than an aging human economist. But they had made one mistake. They had assumed Webb would be alone. Chun was with him. So were 4 other human traders. And unlike most galactic species, humans had evolved on a planet where danger was constant, where predators hunted them for millions of years, where fighting back was not just an option but a reflex. The battle lasted 12 seconds. 2 assassins died. 3 were captured. 1 escaped. Webb had a bruised shoulder and a cut on his face. He refused medical treatment until he had interrogated the survivors. 2 hours later, he had everything he needed. The next morning, Webb called a press conference. Representatives from 100 media organizations attended. The consortium sent observers. The whole galaxy watched. Last night, someone tried to kill me, Webb announced. He displayed images of the assassins. He showed bank records tracing the payment to a shell company owned by a shell company owned by another shell company. It took my team 4 hours to trace the money. It ended at a discretionary fund controlled by the consortium of 12. He let that sink in. They tried to have me killed because I understand their markets too well. Outrage erupted across the exchange. Even species that had been suspicious of humans were shocked. Assassination was not how civilized societies solved problems. But Webb was not finished. They spent 40 million credits on this operation, he continued. 40 million credits to eliminate 1 economist. Do you know what that tells me? He smiled, and there was no warmth in it. It tells me they're scared. It tells me that everything we've been saying is true. The consortium's power is built on confidence, and they know it. They're so afraid of losing that confidence that they'll murder to protect it. He held up a data chip. This contains our complete analysis of consortium debt structures. Every hidden obligation, every circular loan, every piece of confidence holding up their house of cards. He looked directly at the cameras. We were going to release this slowly. Give them time to adjust. Give the system time to absorb the shock. He set the chip down on the podium. We've changed our minds. This information goes public in 72 hours. Every species in the galaxy will see exactly what the consortium has been hiding. And then the markets will decide what that information is worth. The conference ended. The galaxy held its breath. Elder Sithax watched the broadcast from his office. His many arms hung limp at his sides. His compound eyes reflected the image of Marcus Webb, smiling as he condemned the consortium to destruction. "What have we done?" Sithx whispered. They had tried to eliminate a threat. Instead, they had given Webb exactly what he needed: justification, sympathy, moral authority. Now the humans held all the cards, and they were about to play them. Across the galaxy, volatile traders logged into Freenet. Coalition members prepared their positions. Ordinary citizens who had never thought about economics suddenly wanted to know what the consortium had been hiding. 72 hours. That was how long the old order had left. And there was nothing anyone could do to stop what was coming. In the human embassy, Tanaka found Webb staring out a window at the trading floor below. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. Webb did not turn around. "They tried to kill me, Yuki. Not because I did anything wrong. Because I understood too much." He was quiet for a moment. "This isn't just about markets anymore. It's about what kind of galaxy we want to live in." "And what kind is that?" "One where the powerful fear the truth. Where secrets can't be buried forever. Where everyone has a chance." He finally turned to face her. "They've been running this cyst." The data release happened at exactly midnight, Galactic Standard Time. Servers across 100 worlds began uploading files simultaneously. Freenet nodes distributed the information to anyone who asked for it. Within an hour, every major news organization in the galaxy had a copy. The truth about the consortium's finances was not complicated. It was simply something no one had ever bothered to look at before. 12,000 years of accumulated debt. Circular obligations that existed only on paper. Assets valued at prices that had not been tested by actual markets in centuries. A system built on the assumption that nothing would ever change. By morning, the first cracks appeared. A small bank on a Korath world announced it could not honor its obligations. It was a minor institution, barely worth noticing. But it owed money to 3 other banks, which owed money to 12 other banks, which owed money to the Mallory Banking Guild. The algorithm that managed the universal exchange noticed the disruption. It did what it always did. It tried to restore equilibrium. It began adjusting prices to compensate for the small bank's failure. And it found something it had never encountered before. The adjustment affected other prices. Those prices affected still others. The algorithm kept working, kept adjusting, kept trying to find stable ground. But every change it made created new problems. By noon, the Kreth Mineral Index revealed something no one had known. It had been artificially inflated for 800 years. The real value of Kreth minerals was perhaps a third of their listed price. Traders who held Kreth mineral futures began selling. Not many at first. Just enough to get out before prices dropped further. But the algorithm saw the selling and interpreted it as a signal. It adjusted prices downward. More traders sold. Prices dropped further. The algorithm kept adjusting. By evening, the Kreth Mineral Index had lost 40% of its value. The Kreth government announced emergency measures. 3 major financial institutions declared they could not meet their obligations. And that was just the beginning. Elder Sithx watched the chaos from the consortium's emergency command center. Screens covered every wall, showing markets in freefall across the galaxy. Red numbers everywhere. Dropping graphs. Flashing alerts. "Stabilize the Mallory bonds," he ordered. "Inject liquidity into the Velthary grain market. Halt trading on the Dreth Manufacturing Index." His staff worked frantically. They had protocols for market disruptions. They had plans and procedures and algorithms designed to handle any crisis. But their protocols assumed that crises were local, that problems in one market could be isolated from others, that the fundamental structure of the system was sound. None of those assumptions were true anymore. "Sir, the Mallory bonds are dropping despite intervention." The market is not responding to liquidity injection. Sir, we cannot halt trading on the Dreth Index. Freenet nodes are processing trades outside our control. Sir, 17 governments have announced they cannot meet their debt obligations. The number is rising. Civax gripped the edge of his console. His compound eyes darted between screens, trying to make sense of the cascade failure consuming the galactic economy. He had lived for 800 years. He had seen disruptions before, minor corrections, brief instabilities, nothing that the system could not absorb. This was different. This was the system itself failing. 12,000 years of accumulated confidence evaporating in a single day. Find Webb, he ordered. Bring him here, now. On the trading floor of Station Meridian, panic ruled. Beings from 100 species crowded around terminals, trying to sell before prices dropped further. The orderly hum that had characterized the exchange for millennia was replaced by shouting, pushing, chaos. Human traders moved through the crowd with calm efficiency. They were not panicking. They were working. By the Korath Agricultural Index at 12% below listing. Acquire Dreth Manufacturing. Bonds at 40 cents on the credit. Take. Positions in any volatile aligned. Corporation showing real assets. Dr. Tanaka. Coordinated from a makeshift command center in the human embassy. Screens showed her the same catastrophic numbers that Sithax was watching. But where he saw disaster, she saw opportunity. The fundamentals are still there, she told her team. Real factories. Real farms. Real resources. It's only the fictional value that's burning. When the fire stops, what's left will be worth more than ever. When the fire stops? Chan asked. How do we know it will stop? Because fires need fuel. And the fuel is fake value. Once all the lies burn away, only the truth will be left. Tanaka studied the data streams. That's when we start rebuilding. Marcus Webb was escorted to the Consortium Command Center by a security detail. He did not look like a man who had just crashed the galactic economy. He looked like a man who had been expecting this moment for a very long time. You've killed us, Sithak said. His voice was flat, exhausted. Everything we built, everything we protected, gone. Everything you built was already dead. You just refused to bury it. Webb looked at the screens showing the market collapse. I didn't kill anything. I just showed everyone the corpse. Trillions of credits destroyed. Governments failing. Species that will take centuries to recover. Species that were already locked in poverty. Governments that only existed to serve consortium interests. Webb turned to face the elder. I'm not going to pretend this doesn't hurt. It does. People will suffer. Systems will fail. The transition will be painful. Then why? If you knew the cost, why do it? Because the alternative was worse. Another 12,000 years of stagnation. Another 100 generations locked in place. Another eternity where nothing ever changed and no one ever had a chance. Sithak stared at the human. Such a small creature. Such a young species. And yet they had brought down an empire that had stood for millennia. What do you want? He asked finally. You have won. What are your terms? Webb shook his head. You still don't understand. We don't want to replace you. We don't want to rule. We don't want your power. Then what? We want the system to be fair. That's all. That's everything. Webb pointed at the screens. When the crash ends, when the new values stabilize, we're going to help rebuild. Not as conquerors. As partners. Why would you help us? Because we're not monsters. Because destruction was never the goal. Because chaos without purpose is just cruelty. A new alert appeared on the screens. Trading volume on Freenet had exceeded the universal exchange for the first time in history. The old system was dying. The new one was being born. "Look," Webb said. He pointed to certain sections of the display. "Your collapse is bad, but it's not total. The species that actually produce things still have value. The systems that were built on lies are burning, but the ones built on reality are surviving." Scifax looked where Webb pointed. It was true. Amid the sea of red, some indicators had stabilized. Real manufacturing, real agriculture, real resources. Things that existed whether or not anyone believed in them. "The Draxi," Scythax said slowly. "Their index is rising, because they actually make things. They've been undervalued for 6,000 years, because your system kept them down. Now the market is finding their true worth." It was a strange feeling, watching an empire fall while standing in its command center. Scythax had spent 800 years building wealth, accumulating power, maintaining the system that had made his species great. Now he was watching it all crumble, and the human standing next to him was calmly explaining why that was a good thing. "You will rebuild," Scythax said. It was not a question. "We'll help rebuild. There's a difference." Webb moved closer to the screen. "The question is whether you'll be part of it. Whether the consortium will accept a new role in a changed galaxy. What role would that be? Equal, not dominant. Not controlling. Just one voice among many." Webb looked at the elder. "You have knowledge, experience, resources. Those things still have value, but only if you're willing to share them." Scythax was quiet for a long moment. His compound eyes moved across the screens, watching the destruction of everything he had known. And slowly, painfully, he began to understand what the human was offering. Not conquest. Not revenge. Not the humiliation that the consortium would have inflicted if the positions were reversed. A chance, a new beginning, an opportunity to be part of something better. "Your species is very strange," Scythax said finally. "So we've been told. You destroy everything we built, and then you offer to help us rebuild. That's how we do things. Burn the forest. Plant new trees." Webb shrugged. "It's messy. It's painful. But it works." Outside the command center, the crash continued. Markets fell. Systems failed. The old order crumbled. But amid the chaos, something else was happening. Traders were finding real values. Resources were flowing to where they were needed. Species that had been locked in poverty for millennia were finally getting a chance. It was messy. It was painful. But it was alive. And for the first time in 12,000 years, the galactic economy was actually moving, changing, growing. The humans had brought chaos. But they had also brought something more important. They had brought hope. 6 months after Black Monday, the galactic economy looked nothing like it had before. The Universal Exchange still operated. Its halls were still filled with traders. Its servers still processed trillions of transactions every day. But everything else had changed. The volatility index now moved freely. Some days it jumped 10%. Other days it fell just as much. The algorithms that had once maintained perfect stability had been retired. In their place, new systems tracked actual market activity without trying to control it. Prices reflected real values. Companies that produced things were worth something. Companies that only existed on paper were worth nothing. The difference was visible to everyone. Dr. Tanaka walked through the trading floor of Station Meridian. She had been offered a corner office in the new exchange administration. She had refused. She preferred to stay close to the action. Around her, traders from dozens of species worked at their terminals. Humans, Draxi, Karth, even some younger consortium species, who had decided that the new system offered better opportunities than the old one. The volatile movement had grown from a handful of rebels to the dominant trading philosophy in the galaxy. They did not call themselves volatiles anymore. They just called themselves traders. A Draxi named Calax approached her. His gray skin was marked with new patterns, symbols of economic success that his species had not worn in 6,000 years. "The latest growth figures," he said, handing her a datapad. "Draxi agricultural exports are up 40%. Manufacturing is up 60%. Our people are building things again." Tanaka smiled. "And the consortium?" "Adjusting. Some of them, anyway. The ones who accepted the new reality are doing better than they expected. The ones who are still fighting it are falling behind." It had not been easy. The transition had been painful for everyone. Governments had collapsed. Fortunes had been lost. Species that had never known hardship had to learn what it meant to compete. But new fortunes were being made. New governments were forming. New opportunities were appearing every day. Marcus Webb had become something of a legend. The human who had crashed the galactic economy and then helped rebuild it. He received thousands of interview requests every week. He declined them all. Tanaka found him in a small office near the edge of Station Meridian. He was reading reports, as always. His hair had gone completely white. His eyes were still sharp. "They offered you the chairmanship again," she said. "I know. I declined again. They're going to keep asking. And I'm going to keep declining." Webb set down his datapad. "The whole point was to break the power structures. Me becoming chairman would just create a new one. So who should run the exchange?" "No one. Everyone." Webb gestured at the trading floor visible through his window. "Let the markets run themselves. Let traders make their own decisions. Let the system evolve without anyone trying to control it. That's chaos. Yes, that's the point." Tanaka sat down across from him. She had worked with Webb for 7 years now. She had watched him plan the greatest economic disruption in galactic history. She had seen him turn down power that most beings would kill for. She still did not entirely understand him. "What do you believe in?" she asked. "Really? At the core, what drives all of this?" Webb was quiet for a moment. He looked out at the trading floor. Beings from 100 species, working together, competing, building something new. "I believe that systems should serve people, not the other way around," he said finally. "I believe that when systems stop serving people, they should be afraid. I believe that nothing is permanent and that trying to make things permanent is the first step toward tyranny." "That's terrifying." "It's supposed to be. For the people in power, at least." Webb smiled. "For everyone else, it's supposed to be liberating. The knowledge that no matter how bad things get, change is always possible. The powerful always fall eventually. The underdogs always get their chance." A chime sounded. A message from the new Exchange Administration. They were announcing the candidates for the reformed board of directors. Tanaka glanced at the list. 12 names. 3 humans. 3 Draxi. 2 Korath. Representatives from 4 other species that had emerged as leaders in the new economy. Not a single consortium species among them. "They'll complain," she said. "Let them. If they want representation, they can earn it." Webb stood up. "That's how it works now. Nothing is given. Everything is earned." He walked out of the office. Tanaka followed. On the trading floor, the morning session was beginning. Numbers flickered. Credits flowed. Traders made decisions based on real information and genuine risk. It was messy, unpredictable, sometimes frightening. It was also alive. In a corner of the floor, a young Draxi trader named Senna prepared for her first independent investment. She had graduated from the Institute for Economic Dynamism 3 weeks ago. She had studied chaos mathematics under instructors trained by Webb himself. Her first trade was small, a position in a Korath technology startup. Real company, real products, real risk. She entered the order. The system processed it. Her credits moved from her account to the market. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the numbers began to change. Her investment rose, fell, rose again. Senna felt something she had never experienced before. Her people had been locked in economic stagnation for 6,000 years. They had never been allowed to take risks, never been allowed to fail. Now, she could do both. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was the most alive she had ever felt. Across the trading floor, Elder Sithax watched the young Draxi make her trade. He had survived the crash. His personal fortune was reduced to a fraction of what it had been, but he still had enough to live comfortably. More importantly, he had learned. The humans had been right. The old system was not stable. It was stagnant, dead. The appearance of permanence had hidden the reality of decay. This new system was chaotic, unpredictable, often unfair, but it was growing, changing, evolving. Species that had been locked at the bottom for millennia were rising. Species that had been comfortable at the top were having to compete for the first time in their history. Some of them were failing. Others were adapting. The galaxy was sorting itself out in ways that no algorithm could have predicted. Sithax found Webb near the observation deck. "I still do not understand your species," the elder said. "That's fair. We don't always understand ourselves. You had the power to dominate. After the crash, you could have taken everything. Instead, you helped rebuild. You shared your knowledge. You gave everyone a chance. That was always the plan. But why? Every species in the galaxy would have used that power to advance themselves. Why didn't you?" Webb was quiet for a long moment. He watched the trading floor below. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species working together in a system that had not existed a year ago. "Because power without purpose is just tyranny," he said finally. Because the goal was never to win. It was to change the rules. Change them to what? To something fair. Something where the powerful don't stay powerful forever. Something where the weak have a chance to become strong. Webb turned to face the elder. "Your system was designed to keep you on top. Our system is designed to keep everyone competing." That sounds exhausting. It is, but it's also exciting, alive, full of possibility. Webb smiled. "You've spent 12,000 years being comfortable. Now you get to find out what it's like to try." Sithax considered this. It was a strange philosophy, uncomfortable, demanding. But he had to admit, the galaxy felt different now. More alive, more unpredictable, more interesting. "I suppose I can learn," he said. "Everyone can learn. That's kind of the point." Below them, the trading floor hummed with activity. Numbers changed. Credits flowed. Risks were taken and rewards were earned. The galactic economy was smaller than it had been before the crash. The fictional value had burned away. What remained was real. Real companies. Real products. Real opportunity. And for the first time in 12,000 years, anyone could compete for it. The humans had brought chaos to the galaxy. They had crashed the largest economy in history. They had destroyed fortunes that had been accumulated over millennia. But they had also brought something more important. They had brought change, movement, evolution. They had reminded the galaxy that nothing is permanent, that the powerful must always fear the clever. That stagnation, no matter how comfortable, is just death waiting to happen. And now the galaxy was learning what humans had always known. That chaos is not the enemy. Chaos is the beginning. On the trading floor, Senna watched her first investment grow. It was small. It was risky. It might fail, but it was hers. And for the first time in her species' long, sad history, she had a chance. That was worth more than all the stability in the universe.